And could you tell what the words were, or you could just hear the voices?
I couldn't tell what the words were, but I knew it was my mother and Erik.
And did they come inside at some point in time?
Erik came in, running in first, screaming that mom knows. And I sort of grabbed him and said, mom knows what? And he said about dad and I, and he was screaming and he was crying too. Then I didn't have a chance to talk to him again because my mother came running in up the stairs. Just extremely upset from the conversation she had had with Erik. And
so you said you tried to calm Erik down, or you grabbed Erik in some way, and then your mother came in?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do after that?
I confronted her. I reacted from what Erik said and just accused her and said, how can you not have done anything? How could you have known?
What did you say? I mean, were you saying it calmly like you are now, or?
No, I was yelling too. You had to yell to get anything in when my mother was in that state.
I think what people have trouble understanding about the Menendez case is the nature of the crime. And by that I mean the average person, as well as a lot of so-called legal experts who evaluate the case, tend to assess the facts and the evidence as if this was any other typical homicide, which statistically, it simply is not. That is most people's first mistake when they evaluate this case, looking at it through the wrong lens to begin with. This was not your average homicide. It was a parricide, one of the rarest forms of homicide committed in the world, and it was a brutal parricide. To understand the Menendez Brothers case, like truly understand it, and not just look for information to confirm your own biases, like defending them because they're so handsome or demonizing them simply because they killed, you first need to understand the nature of the crime they committed and how extremely rare their particular crime was, even for parricides. The Menendez killings were exceptional by every metric, and that, in and of itself, means something.
The incidence of parricide, fortunately, is very low. Double parricides, meaning a father and a mother killed by their children, is statistically a very rare event. In fact, it's almost incomprehensible to calculate and to understand that. Survivors often are so troubled that they want to make sense out of it too. The Menendez case, why would two kids who were coming from what is clearly portrayed as enormous wealth, living in a Beverly Hills, it's Hollywood mansion, and you want to go, how could this happen?
According to the Department of Justice and FBI, parricide in the United States is a rare occurrence and only accounts for about 2% of all homicides in a year. However, the Menendez killings weren't even among your average parricides. Why? Because both parents were killed. Right away, this adds another level of extreme rarity to the crime committed by these brothers. But we can't even stop there. Why? Because both brothers, meaning multiple children in the same family, killed both parents. That points to something deeply troubling about the family, not just the brothers. Even the prosecutor could admit that.
And it turns out that rich people have dysfunctional families just as much as poor people. One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
So even the prosecutor in the first trial admits that the crux of the problem with the Menendez killings lied with the dysfunction of the family, not just the sons. But she still refuses to even approach logical coherence or any consistency in her rationale for this case, because on the one hand, she wants to admit that Jose Menendez was a horribly abusive person to both his wife and kids, and that his death was a plus for mankind.
The impression I got about Jose Menendez's character was that he could be charming when he chose to, but that his basic nature was very abusive, and that he was abusive to his sons especially and to his wife. And everybody else had just these awful stories about him and what a monster he was. The loss of Jose Menendez, in my mind, was an actual plus for mankind. Jose Menendez was a really awful man.
Then she even goes so far as to admit the nature of this crime is more or less commentary on the dysfunctional family dynamics more than it is on the individual children themselves. Again, here she is saying that.
One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
But then she does a sharp 180 when it comes to following that reasoning through to its logical conclusion. And that's because she's very biased. She exhibited a horrific amount of gender bias against the brothers in 1993, which was common for the times, but she also exhibited such pure ignorance of basic biology and sex crimes as to disqualify her from prosecuting or even opining about the case from a place of authority, as far as I'm concerned.
The history of abuse that occurred up to the point in time when they had the final confrontation on August 20. The evidence does justify both perfect self-defense instruction and imperfect self-defense instruction.
Offenses define sodomy and rape as forcible and atrocious crimes. It's the people's position, first of all, that men cannot be raped since they lack the necessary equipment to actually be raped.
She will not, even after 30 years, admit that the brothers were driven to commit this crime because they were abused so horrifically. She is instead, as a result of her own moral or intellectual bankruptcy, taking the self-defeating position that the brothers committed this horrific crime for money in spite of the proven abuse. That is just a deeply flawed argument by her own logic, and therefore it's self-contradictory. This is why she failed to win in the first trial, and she still doesn't get that. Also, her position is just weak and speaks to intellectual dishonesty and intellectual cowardice, in my opinion. By all accounts and by all crime statistics and all that is known about parricides to date, it is my opinion that the exceptionally rare crime that the Menendez brothers committed, which the leading parricide expert even herself expressed as being incomprehensible, exclusively points to severe dysfunction in the family and prolonged abuse inflicted on the children by the parents and feelings of extreme fear and a perceived inability to escape their abuse. The operative term there being perceived, while they were in a heightened fear state. Years ago, after sitting through hours upon hours of raw court footage on court TV, watching the entire trial from beginning to end, and then after reading books about it, like Hazel Thornton's Hung Jury, who was a juror in the first trial, and Robert Rand's The Menendez Brothers, who was a reporter that followed this case from day one, and who actually gathered a great deal of exclusive interviews that led to insightful information from multiple witnesses and audio recordings, some of which were subpoenaed in the first trial. And then after I read tons of other literature and articles and forums and listened to podcasts and watched documentaries on this case, I created a 10-part series on why I wholeheartedly believed the Menendez brothers' version of events. However, my beliefs and emotions on this case are utterly irrelevant. You see, regardless of whether people believe the brothers' testimony or their version of events or not, their testimonies were nuanced and highly credible. But beyond that, in my series, I discussed how their testimonies and their version of the events were actually corroborated on every level by dozens of witnesses from all walks of life and affiliations with this family, who were far more credible than the two brothers themselves.
I have now practiced criminal defense for a very long time. I have never seen so many family members of the victims come to speak on behalf of the people that killed the victims. It is remarkable. It is unheard of. It is unprecedented.
Also, the brothers' testimonies and the symptoms they exhibited and the behaviors before and after the killings were also corroborated on many levels by highly accredited psychiatric experts, self-sabotaging prosecution witnesses, medical records, and other such compelling documentation like disturbing nude photographs and dated letters. After having presented you 3 years ago with all the information on why you should obviously believe Lyle and Erik Menendez and understand how they would have been driven to do what they did in August 1989, I thought I would now tell you all the major reasons people claim you shouldn't believe them, and then I'll eviscerate each of those claims as I go along, so please do join me.